Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on 93 WIBC and the Daily Signal. Joined this evening by Josh Hammer. Of course, he's the senior editor at large over at Newsweek. He's also the host of the Josh Hammer Show and America on Trial with Josh Hammer over at The First. And I believe you just got back from yet another speaking engagement down at the NatCon conference. So tell us a little bit how that went.
Yeah, Tony, it's funny. I live in Florida, so it's actually up, but all good.
Very fair.
Yeah. So I spoke at the NatCon conference this week. Also spoke actually to YAF, Young America's Foundation, on Thursday. So got a couple of speaking gigs up there. Look, I've been a research fellow with the Edmund Burke Foundation, which puts on these national conservatism conferences for about 4 years or so now. It's really been amazing to see the growth of this particular movement. Back at the first U.S.-based NatCon conference in July of 2019, which I actually covered on a Daily Wire press pass back at the time, we've all come along. We've all moved a lot since then, I guess. But Back then, Josh Hawley was the only U.S. senator to speak. And I think this year they had like 7 or 8 senators. It was a lot. I think it was actually 7 that Marco Rubio had to duck out to be with Donald Trump at his rally in Doral. But regardless, the point is the movement has really come a very long way. And from my perspective, Tony, national conservatism, which you can check it out at nationalconservatism.org, it really is kind of the tip of the spear as to where the American right is right now. And I think in many ways where it is headed is that we are sick of globalism. We are sick of reckless interventionism overseas where it is not necessary. We are sick of a political economy that benefits Wall Street while the median American is just tragically left behind there. We're sick of this idea that all immigration is necessarily good, without any kind of downsides. And it was just a great conference. I had a really enjoyable time, and I look forward to the next one already.
No, I mean, I don't blame you. I mean, I know that my colleague, Mary Margaret Olahan, went and spoke because I read the Intelligencer article that came out talking about how terrible it was that there were women at the conference, because that goes very sharply against the narrative. See, the media wants everyone to think that there's just a bunch of really sad, like fat white basement dweller boys at the NatCon festival, of course, or the NatCon conference. That's not at all the case, and it never has been, but that's the picture the media tries to paint. And by the way, we'll be selling autographed copies of those hit pieces written about us over at the Republican National Convention next week.
Very nice.
That is if Mary Margaret actually lets me print them out. But regarding the media, you've just had 2 phenomenal columns that come out. You're one of the columnists that as soon as I see them go up, they're slotted right into the read sooner before later category. And I wanted to see your take on the media lying about Biden's rapid aging and horrible policy, acting shocked now about all of these revelations coming out, of course, in particular. I think of Jake Tapper, but me thinking of Jake Tapper is not an exhaustive list. And you went into a lot more detail in those columns. So can you give us a bit of an intro? And that's not the best segue, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. So look, I mean, it's crazy, Tony. We're now 2 weeks past the CNN presidential debate, and the fallout, the repercussions, and the reverberations from this debate continue to be like the story. I mean, I can't remember the last time that one story had such a shelf life as this.
Has it really just been 2 weeks since that debate? It feels like it's been months. And I'm not being dramatic just because I'm on the air. It feels like it's been at least a month since that debate. But yeah, you're right, 13, 14 days.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, what can you say that has been said already? But I guess I'll give my best shot here. For 2.5, 3 years at minimum, maybe even longer than that, arguably going back all the way to the 2020 presidential campaign, but at least going back to Biden's first year in office, 2021, whenever those of us on the right have said the obvious, which is that this man is declining, that his mental faculties are declining, his physical abilities are declining, he is simply not the same man that he was really as recently as 2019 when the Democratic presidential primary started. If you had the temerity to say that, the media just got up and yelled at you and called you a bigoted, racist, fascist, Nazi, kook, conspiracy theorist, deplorable, insert pejorative of the day essentially there.
Right.
And now what we saw, Tony, was right after that debate ended, literally within 5 minutes, they all got the memo. Okay, wow, we're done here. We have to dump him. And it just happened so quickly. Van Jones went on an epic rant on air on CNN. MSNBC got the memo. By the end of that weekend, you had the New York Times, the Boston Globe, the Washington Post. They all came out publicly to call for it. And it's just, where were you guys? It's not like you were hiding under a rock for the past 3 years. You saw exactly what we saw. You just didn't want to talk about it.
I was amazed just at the NBC and the CBS, the CNN and Axios leaks, right? All of these aides suddenly started coming out of the woodwork like it's termites having a smoke, right? And they're like rushing to these media outlets, and under anonymity, they're saying, well, this has been happening for years. And oh man, look at over there, that New York Times columnist. Well, the last couple of years have been like this. And you expect me to trust you on all of these other relevant issues now? I mean, you have admitted to the American public that you guys have been sitting on this on purpose. We're not just talking about, when you're sitting on the remote on the couch, you didn't know it. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I was sitting on it. Here you go. You were looking for it. I'm talking about sitting on it on purpose so that no one can hear this story, even though we could all see it with our own two eyes. Don't forget the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, but putting that aside for a second, this is one of the largest scandals in the history of this country. It really is.
Oh, I called it, Tony, in my column outright the single greatest lie and single greatest gaslighting operation in the history of this country. And don't get me wrong, there is a long list. There's obviously the Russia collusion delusion back from 2016, the Mueller report and all of that. But to me, this is actually number one because it was so brazen. It was so impudent. I mean, did they really think that they could actually get away with this? I mean, this man is the president of the United States. He is not a random dog catcher or a random backbencher in Congress or the state house of some flyover state. No, he is the president of the United States, for God's sake.
Now, hold on for a second, because this one Twitter personality who goes by the name of Miriam says that, hey, now, Steve Harvey, you said he's not just some schmuck, but apparently some people have this, this opinion. They say Steve Harvey messed up announcing Miss Universe in 2015, and we didn't call for him to step down from hosting Family Feud. Just saying. The comment underneath is just chef's kiss. Did Steve Harvey have access to the nuclear codes? And then, it's amazing the excuses people are pulling out. Like, oh, well, who hasn't mixed up a couple of names before? Really? Like, that's what we're pulling out of the mailbox here? That's what we're coming to the defense with? Yikes.
It's funny because when you start reading that tweet, Tony, that was actually literally my response. What that reply person said was, one person here has access to the nuclear football and the other does not. But to me, the story actually is broader than that. I remember back when Joe Biden was in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and fell off of a stationary bicycle, that was literally not moving. And right. his inner circle said, oh, no big deal here. Accidents happen. I remember when he was on stage in Colorado Springs, Colorado, at the graduation for the U.S. Air Force Academy. He tripped on stage. He fell going up the steps of Air Force One. Back when he was in Warsaw, Poland in the spring of 2022, he inadvertently said that regime change has to happen in Moscow, which for the entirety of the Cold War, the U.S. foreign policy establishment knew darn well to never poke the bear quite that hard. We've been dealing with rhetorical slip-ups. We've been dealing with physical slips for years and years and years. Again, you don't have to be a psychologist to see what's going on here. The man is just in his 80s and he's declining. To a small extent, I actually really do feel bad for the guy. We all have had grandparents, old relatives. We see what's happening here. The evil is the cover-up. And the evil right now, I think, Tony, is in so-called Dr. Jill Biden, who is really doing her best Lady Macbeth thing and is really just trying to go all in on a power-hungry grab, notwithstanding the fact that is clearly to the detriment of her party, to her country, and above all, as a spouse, as her husband, goes out in his 80s and humiliates himself in front of the entire world.
And it is, of course, disgusting. And this brings up kind of the three points of evil and failure here. So the first group of the evil and failure is, again, as you have said, Jill, Hunter, the rest of the Biden family who have encouraged and enabled a man who should have been retired, spending time with all of his grandchildren, not just, the ones that he admits that he has, through the rest of his days. That's what every individual who has dementia or has a severe elderly condition should be doing. Number two, of course, there's Biden, actual Joe, who has made his entire career to lead up to this point. by being duplicitous, by having horrible policy decisions, by being stubborn and angry through every kind of trial and tribulation, so that this was the only logical conclusion. He was going to have to ride this gravy train until it derailed. And at that point, there's no way for him to get out of there. So he's just stuck on this train going off of the cliff. You can think of the Wild West example with the big, huge bridge over the canyon. He's stuck on that, just wildly going over the edge of the cliff. And then, of course, as you pointed out, the media, who has knowingly covered this up, pretending that all of these leaks out there now, like, you didn't have interns in the White House texting interns over at the left-wing news outlets. Get out of here. Jen Psaki was negotiating with MSNBC for months, likely, before she left. We're going to pretend that these leaks just suddenly spring out into the media? Oh, come now.
Well, how about the Wall Street Journal's article from early June? So the Wall Street Journal had this bombshell article where they spoke with, I think, 45 elected officials about their kind of behind-the-scenes view of Joe Biden's obvious cognitive and physical decline. And the most astounding part of that article, Tony, was not the fact that you have 45 people roughly speak up about it. The most astounding part was that numerous of them, Gregory Meeks from New York comes to mind here, basically said to the Wall Street Journal, oh, sorry, the White House called me and told me to try to change my mind. I mean, they basically admitted on the record that the White House was trying to interfere in what they told the Wall Street Journal about the president's condition behind closed doors. So this was all public. I mean, this was all kind of out in the open there, and yet they continue to just double down and double down and double down. Unfortunately for Democrats, I think they're stuck with him. I genuinely do not think that they are going to switch races or they're not going to switch horses at this point. They have a major campaign finance obstacle when it comes to federal election law and so forth there. I don't see it. Kamala Harris is not more popular there, so they're going to have to roll the dice. But what a terrible situation they put themselves in.
It truly is a situation of having to lie in the bed that they made. And we're talking like hospital corners made. This was a very intently made bed. Josh Hammer, senior editor-at-large over at Newsweek, not to mention also over on The First. Check out his stuff there. Thanks for hopping on, man.
You bet.